all I have to do is say that. I mean, this is what this song is based on. Scott Walker's sound really
Gotcha.
is a lot. But, it's still really well done. Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Audiophiles. The bloke on the left is John, the bloke on the right is Andy. They talk to the sister, the father, and the mother with a microphone in one hand and a checkbook in the other. And the camera noses in to the tears on her face. The tears on her face. The tears on her face. More on that later. But we've got a track to listen to. And today, because it's Friday, yes it is, we are listening to a track selected by one of our lovely viewers. This time, the viewer in question is Mary T.33. And can I just say, as a request to all future requests, that your handles rhyme? It's so much more pleasing. So Mary T.33, they left a comment on Jimmy Eat World, a praise chorus. And they suggested Dead Can Dance. The track The Carnival is over. Sandy's turn. I'm aware of Dead Can Dance. I can't say I'm overly familiar with their stuff, but I remember one of my mates at school having it drawn on his canvas bag, the school bag. So yeah, I remember Dead Can Dance, and some of their covers of their albums were being reproduced. By another friend, and I can remember seeing them. But yeah, it's Andy's turn. Andy, have you heard of Dead Can Dance?
Yes, that's the exact cutoff of where my knowledge begins and ends of the band. Definitely heard the name before. I haven't a clue what their sound is like though. So, it sounds to me like as sparse as your familiarity is with it, mine is even more lacking. So let me endeavor to correct that and take Mary T's suggestion and go off and give this thing a go. And I'll come back, and for her and hopefully others' enjoyment, we can chop it up a bit. All right, we're 40 seconds in. This is already has this kind of tranquil and lulling effect. Um, it starts with those sort of symphonic like sounds that I also sound like they're synthesized. Um, and they then add this circular moving string motif over top of that, which also further enhances this lulling feel or mood to the song. Yeah, it's subdued and tranquil and pretty, but I wonder if this is an indicator of what the song is going to present as a whole, or if there's going to be some shifts in these sounds and this mood. Only time will tell, so let's press on. Ooh, little melody. He's got a really good voice, and it does match this mood that they've created. But it's a very croony like approach to a vocal delivery, which is interesting. I don't know if I was expecting that, but I like the how it sounds for sure.
Where flowers turning gray, they're fragile there, so they can in turn reach up and kiss the sky. They're driven by a strange desire.
All right, little bass.
Unseen by the human eye, someone's calling.
Ooh, these cascading
I
tinkles.
remember when you held my hand in the park we would play when the circus came to town. Over outside the circus gathering, move silently along the rain-swept boulevard. The procession moves on, the shouting is over, the fabulous freaks are leaving town. They're driven by a strange desire. Unseen by the human eye, someone's calling.
These little flourishes that they add just to inject some melody or more melody throughout, to me is my favorite part. It's not any one of them either, because they've switched it up a little bit here and there. It's just what it adds to the song and gives it this added sense of depth and lushness that I think really helps add to the sound that they've got going on here. Very pretty though. Let's press on.
The carnival is over. We sat and watched as the moon rose. For the very first time.
Interesting, yeah. This is definitely not something that I would normally flock to, if I'm just being completely honest. It's a little bit too key driven without enough, drum work or my conventional safety nets of rock and roll guitar and things, and there are plenty of songs that do kind of diverge away from those staples that I often gravitate towards. So it's this isn't anything crazy or different for me, but it is something that I don't think I would normally listen to or even probably heed if it were playing in the background or someone had suggested it to me with a brief description. I may have just might not capture my attention. But it's part of the beauty of doing this channel, you know what I mean? I'm sit down and I kind of like allow myself to listen to the music, any song that's recommended by one of you guys, and kind of let it wash over me and give it the justice that it deserves. They do enough in this song to make it interesting, though. These added bits of melody that are injected throughout. His very interesting crooning like delivery sounds great with the sound that they've developed throughout it as well. I think I heard an allusion to both a circus and a carnival in this song. I'm wondering what the metaphor is, if there is one, and what the meaning is behind it. Yeah, it was a very pretty song, that did have this calming effect to it. And it's interesting, he talks about how there's like a storm approaching, and literally at times it felt like cascading rain, the earliest foreshadowing to storms, as the rain starts to pitter-patter before it reaches its full potential. So yeah, there were sounds that kind of almost took their cue from the lyrics. I'm sure it could have easily been the other way around from the writing process. Maybe, it was the inverse. But regardless, they paired really well with one another, and sounded really good for something that I don't think I would normally listen to. It had this air of maturity to it with all of the way it was composed and arranged. Yeah, it was wholly enjoyable, just because it's not that from a sound or a genre that would instantly grab my attention doesn't mean it should be discounted or not given its my full attention, I should say. So having given it my full attention, I did really, really enjoy it and thought it was an excellent sound. I wonder if this is indicative of their sound as a whole. It's a band whose name is the only thing I'm familiar with from them. I don't know what they sound like before having listened to this, and now I don't even know if it's fair to assume that this is what the rest of their oeuvre sounds like. But I guess that's what John is here for. So let's get back to him and chop it up.
Desmond Olivier Dingle, he's back. So you've had to listen to The Carnival is Over by Dead Can Dance. What do you think?
Took me by surprise, did this one. I didn't think that this was the sound I was going to be getting from Dead Can Dance. No, that's completely on me. I've never sat down and asked anyone, please tell me exactly how Dead Can Dance sound and, what their genre is or whatever. It's just when they've come up when discussing genres and bands. I don't know and this song is probably not a strong indicator of everything that they put out or their sound as a whole. So that's also not fair to do, but it was very, seemingly like key synth heavy. Like most of the sounds that were coming in this song sounded to me to be, and while they were hearkening to symphonic like sounds, all seemed to be coming by way of these synthesized sort of fabricated versions of the sounds that they were trying to go for. Unless you're going to be like, no, they had a full, string quartet in the recording studio for this or whatever. I would be surprised by that. So yeah, I was just a little taken aback at first, and certainly by the end of it, having heard no real divergence in their sound, but it was still really enjoyable. So we get these like resonant and swelling symphonic tones that lushly introduce us to the song. and that resonance comes and goes a few times, sort of in that swelling vein that I described a moment ago. And then we're treated to these strings that are kind of picked over. And between the sort of lulling effect of that symphonic swelling and resonance and the kind of circular motion of that guitar picking, it's even more like subdued and tranquil sounding. And it's just kind of like lulling you into this kind of state of like, I don't want to say it. I'm not. It's this. I don't mean as a pejorative, like, oh, it's putting me to sleep. But this does have this calming effect where you could easily see yourself falling asleep to the sounds of these two, like instruments commingling with one another here in the early days of this track. So then at like the 50-second mark enters this interesting, kind of slightly higher registered and more quickly moving melody that appears to be, again, I think some sort of synthesized or key driven sound. Um, and this is the first indicator of their ace in the hole for this song, which is these different injected bits of melody that appear throughout that add this much needed dimension to the song. It gives it movement, it gives it a bit of variety, and it gives you something to really latch onto from a more melodic standpoint. And so this, along with all the other iterations and things akin to it throughout the song, was what kept me interested and sort of coming back and kind of pulled into it. Without it, I think it would have just been like lovely background, tranquil sounds that I could easily just, pop on my phone as I fall asleep at night. So yeah, it cuts out at the 116 mark, and then come these vocals delivered in a very croony style. It was almost a throwback kind of vocal delivery that I wasn't ready for, even though the music would suggest it be a perfect pairing when you think about it. Nonetheless, I was like, oh, okay, this is what we're getting. Rich male voice delivering these vocals, and it sounds really good. I gotta say, and I mean this with like no sense of like judgment towards the song or obviously towards Mary. This is not something that I would typically gravitate toward on face value. Like if someone had described this to me without having been able to hear it, I don't know if I really would have been like, jonesing to go home and pop this thing on right away. And yet, here's an excellent example of why we do this. Despite all of these things that I think would be working against it, I'm actually enjoying the song. It all sounds really well put together, very well kind of arranged in the composition of the music and everything. So it's got me. I'm liking the vocals. In the first stanza, he sings of clouds moving in outside over a dusty boulevard as flowers turn and stretch their, I think he said like fragile necks toward the sky or whatever. Which makes perfect sense. Like, the rain is coming and the plants are thirsty or what have you. It's interesting. A lot of the sounds really fit well with the visages that he's creating with his words. Like there are moments where it feels like rain coming down or movement in the sky amongst the clouds. Sometimes even the removal of light or the encroachment of darkness in the form of a rain cloud could easily be interpreted through some of the sounds that we were getting here. So I liked how that was kind of a mature way to either, well, I don't know which came first here with the chicken and the egg and the music and the vocals, but to one of them to take their cue from the other to create something that is like cohesive. I really appreciated that a lot. So he makes an allusion to the circus during this bit, but not the carnival. And while the instruments aren't playing the manic motifs we often associate with circuses and or carnivals, some of the tones of the instruments were similar or akin to the instruments that you might hear playing completely different stuff at a completely different tempo, but nonetheless, they have the tones of something you might hear in a setting like that. But that was really the only, I mean, next to like what is it, like Bring in the Clowns or something, like sad songs that whose names connoted, it might be something different altogether. This was kind of had I had that experience where I'm like, oh, this isn't very carnival-y or circus-y at all. And in fact, it's rather, to abuse this word again, subdued. Um, so yeah, I found that interesting as well as I sat and thought about it. Um, yeah, in the second verse, he sings, "The circus gathering moved silently along the rain-swept boulevard." Again, an allusion to this boulevard. And there appears more of this beautiful cascading notation, which all these added bits sound really, really great to me throughout. It's like a melody dump in the song where it needs it, and I appreciate that. There's another beautiful little motif that comes and goes a few seconds later as he sings, "Someone is calling." I think it's around like the 4:16 marker. This motif repeats several times as the singer sings the titular line, and then his delivery becomes more hushed and distant as he sings in a more almost spoken word. It's certainly more like withdrawn a little bit fashion as the moon rose again for the very first time. Which I think is an interesting line to suggest that something is being done again and for the very first time. How those two things can happen simultaneously, I don't know. It sounds like an old riddle. But it was an interesting line and it made me scratch my head. And then the song slowly draws to an end, harkening back to those sort of faux symphony sounds that started things off in the very beginning. So yeah, this was very pretty, very calming. Um, but it was a little different for me. I mean, this isn't your four-piece rock band. And shit, maybe they are when in other settings and songs and scenarios, but in this it was a little outside my comfort zone from what I'm because based off what I'm familiar with, and yet it still I think was a wholly pretty sounding song with a great vocal delivery and some interesting use of melody and some excellent use of arrangement and composition. So all that added together, I'd say it's kind of hovering around like if I had to grade it like a B experience for me. That could have potential either way. If I gave this several more listens, I could be like, it turns out I'm not. Or it could be like, actually, I really enjoyed this part and this part as well that I didn't catch on my first listen. So there is a bit of intrigue for me and this song because of that alone. So tell me a bit more about Dick. Is this indicative of their sound, or are there,
Enough.
is it okay? Okay, because
They've been going a long time.
Okay, okay, go on. Tell me some more then, John.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say this. I mean, all I have to do is say that. I mean, this is what this song is based on. Scott Walker's sound really is,
Gotcha.
is a lot. But it's still really well done. But all the stuff you said, like the intricacies of like the instrumentation mirroring his thoughts, and reminiscing of the way he delivers as well. This is all Scott Walker 101, really is.
Yeah, okay. So they're just ripping pages out of his book. They're doing it really well. But
Really
yeah,
well. A little bit in their own style in certain bits. So, which makes me like it, but not go to town on it. So, I recognize it and I do like it. But we'll get into it a bit more. So, yeah, they're an interesting band. I mean, time was back in the 80s, all you need to know about them is they were signed to 4AD, and that would have, given you a picture of what they're like and then and other stuff as well. So, yeah. Deg and Dance were formed in Melbourne, Australia in 1981. And they're known under the genres, started off as sort of post-punk and gothic rock. And then they moved into other stuff as well. Neoclassical dark wave, world ambient, art rock, avant-garde, blah, 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 blah. So they were formed by Brendan Perry, who sounds like an outcast from Beverly Hills 9021010, whatever. Vocals and guitar, and Lisa Gerard, vocals and percussion. And they're the core members. And they've had a number of other members, but initially it was Paul Erickson on bass and Simon Monroe on drums. Gerald and Perry were a couple actually, and they were met as members of the Melbourne's little band scene. They got together, did the band, started doing quite well around Melbourne scene, and then they actually moved to London. And as we've heard from other bands, not least Evil, Graham, the sort of like bands with that sort of aspiration in the early 80s were going to London from Australia.
Right.
I know. So that sort of checks with that. And when they got there, they signed with said label 4AD. So with the duo of Perry Gerard, the United Kingdom lineup was still Paul Erickson, but Peter Ulrich as well would have been on drums. So the group's debut album, self-titled Dead Can Dance, was released in 1984. The album featured, in quotes, drum-driven ambient guitar music with chanting, singing, and howling, and fitted in with the ethereal wave style of their label mates, Cocteau Twins. They followed this with the 4-track EP, Garden of Arcane Delights. So you get into the style of the idea. I mean, they're very into their sort of ancient fonts as well, and their pictures, all their stuff. Really, all good stuff. And all music described their early work as goth as it gets, which they didn't like, but it was. And that fits the pattern of Cocteau Twins, actually. And there's other things that are very similar as well. So for their second album, Spleen and Ideal, 1985, the group comprised the core of still Gerard and Perry with cello, trombone, timpani added in by session musicians. All music described this as a consciously medieval European sound, like it was recorded in an immense cathedral. The group built quite a following in Europe, and the album actually reached number 2 in the UK indie charts. So in '89, Gerard and Perry actually separated romantically. Gerard moved to Barcelona and then returned to America, married, had a kid or two. Perry moved to Ireland, and apparently, I didn't write this down, but I'm sure I read that he actually lived on an island in a river in Ireland. So that's cool. But they still wrote, recorded, and performed as Dead Can Dance as a musical partnership still. So the 6th album, Into the Labyrinth, was released in 1993, and it was the first album completed on their own without the aid of any guest musicians or sessions. And this is the track from that said album. So it helped massively by a distribution deal with Warner Brothers. It sold 500,000 copies worldwide for a small indie band. That is impressive. Interesting enough, of the band, I think it's 11 tracks. Yeah, 5 of them are sung in English. Gerard also sings in this sort of self-created wordless vocal technique similar to Barcelona, which of 6 tracks, which is basically speaking in tongues, described as the fluid vocalization of speech-like syllables that lack any readily comprehensible meaning. In some cases, as part of a religious practice. So you'd love that. And 2 tracks are performed completely a cappella. So interesting stuff going on. And again, you can argue Cocteau Twins, Elizabeth Fraser, she does sing lyrics. I think some of the earlier stuff, though, she's deliberately making it as obtuse as possible. And she's enjoying the sound of these words that may or may not be made up. So it goes along those lines, I suppose. Very interesting. So the Carnival is over, apparently, was described as a reminiscence of preteen Perry living in East London and visiting the circus. And that's it in terms of what it means. So the album itself in the UK reached number 47 in the mainstream charts, which I think is pretty good, and number 5 in the indie charts. But it also is, I think it's the only one, but it hit the 122 spot in the Billboard 200 in the USA, which again is pretty reasonable for a small indie band.
For the US, that's pretty good.
So All Music Row, as the album slowly unwinds over an hour's length, the two again create a series of often astounding numbers that sound like they should be millennia old, mixing and matching styles to create new fusions. The LA Times wrote, the Irish-Australian duo molds Gregorian mantras with Bulgarian folk and traditional Celtic. But unlike its previous 4 albums, the eclectic blend is accessible. So the expansion into bolder Middle Eastern and African rhythms breathes life into the dark Gothic ballads, and Lisa Gerrard's eerie crystalline vocals send shivers through this hybrid strain of ancient melodies and modern spiritualism. So there you go. Lyrics, not too much there. Here we go. Outside, the storm clouds gathering, moving silently along the dusty boulevard. I don't know how many boulevards there are in East London. I'm guessing it's a round figure just below 1. But anyway, where flowers turning crane their fragile necks so they can in turn reach up, kiss the sky. They are driven by a strange desire, unseen by the human eye. Someone is calling. I remember when you held my hand in the park we would play, when the circus came to town. Look, over here. Outside, the circus gathering moved silently along the rain-swept boulevard. The procession moves on. The shouting is over. The fabulous freaks are leaving town. They are driven by a strange desire, unseen by the human eye. Someone's calling. The carnival is over. We sat and watched as the moon rose for the very first time. Yeah, interesting.
It just suggests metaphor because of all these other like, yes, in the middle they talk with some, direct allusions to the the titular line, but all the focus on the weather and the boulevard and all this stuff, it just seems like it's got to mean something bigger than just a young girl's memory, of the carnival coming to town.
Boys, memory. It's the blokes.
Oh, so sorry. Forgive me.
Yeah. No, I think it smacks of a young boy trying to add meaning and atmosphere into something of a memory that perhaps didn't have meaning and atmosphere. That's what it smacks of to me. But it's interesting. They do this in other songs, but on this one, the line, "The procession moves on, the shouting is over," is from the opening lines of the Joy Division song, "The Eternal."
Oh,
Probably the most gloomy song. But it starts, procession moves on, the shouting is over. Praise to the glory of loved ones now gone, talking aloud as they sit round their tables, scattering flowers washed down by rain. It's proffered up that it's about a funeral, but it's also, some people have the theory that those 4 lines are also about a wedding, and it's the same sort of atmosphere, in Kurt's writing it, so it's not the happiest of occasions, whichever one it is. But there you go. So it's interesting they took those lines, which is, why not? Okay, so I would say I enjoyed this song as well, actually. I wouldn't reach to it and listen to it all the time.
yeah, that's fair.
But it fits in with other stuff that I do listen to. Scott Walker, Cocteau Twins, stuff like that. It does fit in with that. So yes, it's a decent, and I think I'm not familiar with this album, or I've only got a smattering of other tracks, some of which were a bit more sort of gothy and a bit more Cocteau Twins as well. So this is interesting to hear this for me. I really enjoyed it.
It was a pleasant surprise for me, given in the end what I was listening to and then liking it and being like, okay, well, that's typically if it's not doesn't have like some real interesting guitar shit or some interesting drums, which this thing didn't have a lot of at all, and it seemed very key driven. that it still resonated with me. And I just think it was the way it was all put together, real tastefully done, and his vocal approach as well, coupled with it. It made for a good finished product.
Yeah, yeah, and you could say some of the lines in it were a bit sort of overwrought or even stretched
Yeah.
in terms of like to put this heavy meaning on it. The flowers turn and crane their fragile necks, so they in turn can reach up and kiss the sky. I mean,
Right. What does that have to do with the
it's a,
memory? Like that's the
it's
point.
a,
That's
it's, it's a bit sixth form poetry, isn't it? But
yeah.
when it's delivered in a way, you can still take it without throwing up in your mouth.
Yeah.
When it's done well. And I think like the bit at the end, right at the end, where we sat and watched the moon rose for the very first time, it's kind of saying that this stuff has happened and passed, and now we're seeing things with new eyes, so everything appears
There
new
you go.
again,
Okay.
which is very
Yeah.
childish view of like this amazing thing. I was thinking about the interesting thing because it's about a circus, but he's called it the Carnival, and the two have got slightly different meanings, particularly I think also American and British in terms of that. But the circus is quite you see on films and stuff, it's a grand event, but actually in reality in this country, there's fairly naff little things. And a carnival feels more like a massive party and a parade and stuff like that.
Yes.
So he's wise to call the song "The Carnival's Over," not "The Circus is Over," because it can also be something when you sing a bit of a circus. It means it's not done very well and a bit of a
Yeah.
fuck up.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's all
Exactly.
these meanings which are really interesting. But back to the timeline. So after this, Gerard released a debut solo recording, The Miracle, in 1995, and then reunited with Perry on the Dead Can Dance studio album Spirit Chaser in 96. The album also charted in the Billboard 200 and reached number one in the top world music album charts. In 1998, Dead Can Dance began recording the follow-up to Spirit Catcher, which was due to release in 1999 and planned to be followed by a world tour. However, they separated before it was completed. Dead Can Dance then reunited in 2005, and during that time, I think they did a bit of gigging, but they released loads of limited edition recordings of shows from their European and North American tours. And then Anastasis, their eighth studio album, was released in 2012. Their ninth, Dionysus was came out in 2018. There was a planned world tour which was interrupted by the pandemic, and of course then they resumed it eventually, but that was cut short in September 2022 due to unspecified health reasons. But then the following year, in May 2023, Lisa Gerrard stated in an interview that she thought the Dead Can Dance was, quotes, really finished now, citing artistic differences on the making process of Dionysus and the setting of the track list from their last tour. I mean, people will fire the silliest of things. And she thought the situation started to wean itself away from the kind of connection that we had together. I guess if things like that, you're going to start falling out of the bloody, the set list. Anyway, and then in April this year, Brendan Perry confirmed that he was working on an album sequel to Dionysus called Apollo. It's a bit of a theme going there. Expected to be finished by the end of this year. And the following month, in May this year, he confirmed that it would be a new Dead Can Dance album, but as a solo work. And he cited that he was now the main member of the band. But Lisa was too, in quotes, when she decides to show up. So yeah, I'm sure with a conciliatory, phrase like that, she's bound to come running.
it should entice her back to the fold. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's done. So there you go, and then continuing on, and hopefully he brings out some more stuff. But I don't see it being a duo anymore. But yeah, really interesting stuff. I think I shall wrap it
by Mary. I enjoy giving this thing a go for sure.
Mary T. 33. It just reminds me, for older viewers, British viewers out there, of Dirty Gertie from number 30. That was Basil Brush.
30 from number 30.
So sorry, Mary T. 33. I'm not calling you Dirty or Gertie, and I don't know what number you're that. But anyway, thanks very much. Dig, dig. Thanks very much for offering us. This is a great shout. Thanks for listening to this, Andy. Folks out there, tell us what you think. If you like this, please do hit the like button and drop some comments. There's plenty of you, I have a sneaking suspicion, that know a lot more about Dead Can Dance than myself and the good partner there. So yeah, please slap us with some good nuggets of info and your opinions as well on this track and anything else that is a good listen by this interesting duo. We'd love to hear from you. If you haven't subscribed already, please do. I really appreciate everybody who does support the channel. It all helps in a good cause. For daft kids or something, I don't know, but yeah, we really appreciate everybody who does support the channel. And please drop your recommendations for us to listen to on the comment section of any of our episodes, and we will add it to the list, and then we will cross that bridge when we get to it eventually in the fullness of time. That being said, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see all of you on the next episode of the Audiophiles.
See you later, guys.